Got digging through the past, crazy tales they uncover fast. History stranger than you think. They'll also talk about wieners in a blink. They'll talk about wieners in a blink. Oddball History.
Episode 93. All right. It's Oddball History Podcast. It's episode 93. We're back. Welcome. Thanks for being here. We appreciate you. This week we've got a great story for you. 3 great stories, actually. We're doing historic beefs. Beef a la history, I think I might call it. That's fun, like it's a dish. But we got lots of good ones. We got Elizabeth I versus Mary Queen of Scots. We got Roald Amundsen versus Robert F. Scott. And we got Bette Davis versus Joan Crawford in a steel cage match for the strap. Not really. There's not really a steel cage match. I wish there was, but there is not. So far, at least in my reading, there wasn't ever a steel cage match. Yeah, maybe. But we'll get into that in a bit. First, top comments of the week, as always. Top comments of the week. Hey, we got some good ones. The first over on YouTube on the short about people speculating what the Martians might look like. This guy, Elder Tech Dragon, said, "It must have been exciting to see new data about an object people had been seeing in the sky since the dawn of man. Speculation obviously ran wild, but thankfully science is self-correcting and willing to abandon bad theories when additional data arrives to challenge it." Which, so true. Shout out science, shout out Elder Tech Dragon. We appreciate it, and it's so true. And I also, on a personal level, appreciate Percival Lowell for specifically for getting so carried away. If he hadn't gotten so carried away, that story would have been, shit. It wouldn't have been nearly as fun without this one guy going, "You fucking idiots, how dare you say there's not canals on Mars." It wouldn't have been nearly as good of a time, but he did. He stuck to his guns, wrong as they were. On the same video, that same Martians appearance speculation video, but over on Instagram, John Guastavino said, "I, for one, welcome our new insect overlords." Just a perfect Simpsons reference. Just a bang-up Simpsons reference. I made a little reference to it in the video. Appreciate you, John Guastavino. Finally, on the episode itself on YouTube, this guy Robert Darris T5K said, "Play the song by the Carpenters, calling occupants of extraordinary ships." I think this might have been like a Google Translate thing, because that's not the name of the song. It's called "Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft," but all the same, it's a song that the Carpenters covered famously. I think their cover is like the most famous version of it. But they covered this song, and it's like a call to extraterrestrial beings, which is pretty cool. Shout out the Carpenters, and shout out Robert Darris for sending us their way. Good times. And that'll do it for the top comments of the week. We appreciate them. Keep them coming. Now it's time to get down to the beefs. Where's the beef? It's right here in this episode. That old lady would be thrilled if she hadn't died many, many years ago. The Wendy's lady, do people get that reference? There was an old woman who said, "Where's the beef?" in Wendy's commercials back in the day. She was an icon, I tell you. She was an icon. This is the kind of thing, if I ever have grandchildren, I'm going to be telling them about, and they're going to be really annoyed. I'm going to be like, "God damn it, you listen to me when I tell you about the old woman who wanted to know where the beef was in the Wendy's commercials." Our first beef of the night, possibly the greatest beef of all time in history. These ladies did not care for one another. They were cousins, and both queens, and one ended up having the other's head cut off, as a lot of good beefs end that way. Elizabeth I, daughter of Anne Boleyn and King Henry VIII, beloved Queen of England, beginning in 1558 with the death of her half-sister Mary Tudor, aka Bloody Mary. She had really savaged the Protestants. She had brutally suppressed the Protestants in England, and so that had made the English hate her and love Elizabeth even before Elizabeth took the throne. So when Bloody Mary died and Elizabeth stepped in, people are already like, we love this lady, just on the basis of her not being her half-sister Mary. She's beloved from day one, but she doesn't have the most rock-solid claim to the throne. What with her father had divorced Catherine of Aragon, I believe, to marry Elizabeth's mother, Anne Boleyn. So in the eyes of the Catholic Church, she was a bastard and the product of a criminal non-legitimate union. And so her claim wasn't quite as solid as it might have seemed. And because of this, Elizabeth's always looking over her shoulder. She's a good royal in that way. You know, she's not going to let anything sneak up on her. Enter to this scene Elizabeth's cousin, Mary Stuart, Mary Queen of Scots, she'll come to be known. She has an impeccable royal pedigree. She's the daughter of James, one of the Jameses, James the IV of Scotland, and Henry VIII's sister, Margaret. At the age of 5, Mary's betrothed to the French Dauphin, and then she's raised in the French royal court. She becomes like for all intents and purposes, a French lady. She's like a French royal. At 15, she marries the Dauphin. A year later, King Henry II of France, the Dauphin's father, he dies in a jousting accident. A big shattered lance flew up and hit him in the eye. And it was bad enough. It said the doctors adopted a wait and see strategy. And so he dies of sepsis after 10 agonizing days. You can't do the wait and see method, I don't think, at this time. I think it always leads to slow death. But anyway, they did it. He dies. Suddenly, the Dauphin is King Francis II, and Mary is the Queen of France and Scotland. So suddenly, the Dauphin is King Francis II of France. And Queen Mary is the queen of both Scotland and France. She's got the north and the south of Elizabeth I. Elizabeth I does not like this, of course. It makes her uncomfortable. She's always looking over her shoulder, remember? But even then, it wouldn't have been so bad if she had remained married to King Francis II. But instead, King Francis II dies of an ear infection like a year into his reign. He just keels over of an ear infection like almost immediately. So then she goes from being the number one most eligible bachelorette in all of Europe to a distant second behind her hot cousin Mary. Mary is suddenly, not only is she single, but she's looking to come back to Scotland. She wants to go home to Scotland for the first time since she was a child, and Elizabeth doesn't like this idea very much. She does not. She turns down safe conduct through England for Mary. So Mary eventually, she actually says that and then changes her mind, but by the time she changes her mind, Mary has already sailed from France to Scotland, and she's pissed. Of course, she's also like a foreigner at her own home. She's for all intents and purposes, again, a French woman. She's like a French noblewoman. She knows no English, very struggles to remember the Scots of her youth. She appreciates ballet and music. She's accomplished in things like dancing, needlework, and embroidery. Elizabeth, by comparison, she refused to confine her education to the subjects that the court thought was like ladylike at the time. So she was geography, history, math, astronomy, calligraphy, and she was a master of languages as well. Both women were accomplished horse girls, and both could play the lute and the virginals, which I learned is like an early version of the harpsichord. I shouldn't have said I just learned that. I should have just acted like I knew it all along. Elizabeth really is more accomplished than Mary. It's pretty clear she's better educated, more accomplished, and yet she is fucking jealous as shit of Mary the whole time they know each other, because Mary's like sexy. Mary has a sex appeal that the Virgin Queen just does not have, and it drives her fucking nuts. It makes her very competitive with Mary when really Elizabeth could feel good. There was never a time when Mary was really like eclipsing Elizabeth in any other arena other than like sex appeal, pure sex appeal. And yeah, it never stops driving her crazy. One time, a little later in this story, when Elizabeth takes it upon herself to send Mary potential suitors, like a list of potential suitors. She's like, I'll give you some names. The audacity of this woman, really. First of all, she sends this guy, Lord Robert Dudley, who it was weird because he was always rumored to be a possible item with Elizabeth. Everybody thought Elizabeth and him were a thing. When she suggests him, Mary and basically all of Mary's advisors as well are like, if you think he's so great, why don't you marry him though? And Elizabeth was like, because I don't know, it just is not important. And but they reject it. You know, they don't want any part of Dudley. But there for a while, they're like sending emissaries back and forth talking about the potential of this guy, Lord Robert Dudley. It's at this point when they're sending emissaries back and forth, discussing this schlub Lord Robert Dudley that Elizabeth wants Mary to marry. This guy, Sir James Melville. He's a Scottish emissary. He's going back and forth between them. He was sent south to pursue the Dudley question, and Elizabeth spent the whole time asking him like a bunch of pointed questions, trying to figure out like if she was better than Mary in all kinds of various ways. Like he said that Elizabeth was the fairest queen in England and Mary the fairest queen in Scotland. Elizabeth was like, fuck that, say which one is hotter. And he mumbled that Mary was hotter, actually. I'm sorry, I really am, but she's hotter than you. So that, of course, that's doesn't sit right with Elizabeth. It says in here in this book, I'm taking this story, this anecdote, by the way, from Great Feuds in History by Colin Evans, 10 Struggles That Shaped the World. Great book, very fun. Elizabeth glowered. A glutton for flattery, she was unused to such candor. Sulkily, she next demanded to know if Mary was taller than herself. On learning that she was, Elizabeth trumpeted her celebration. Then she is too high, for I myself am neither too high nor too low. Which congratulations to Elizabeth on that count. And then Elizabeth kept asking Melville about Mary's social graces, forcing him into one reluctant admission after another. Yes, Mary was an accomplished huntress. Yes, she read good books. Yes, she played the lute and virginals. At this, Elizabeth pounced. How well does she play? She says to this fella Melville. Reasonably well for a queen, groaned the unfortunate Melville. That night, Elizabeth arranged an elaborate charade whereby Melville was inveigled into a chamber where she was playing the virginals. She's like, how dare you come in here when I'm playing the virginals and have no idea you're going to come in? But since you're in here already, hey, who's better at the virginals, me or that bitch? And he has to, this time he can honestly say that Elizabeth was better at the virginals than Mary was. But he goes back to Mary and he's like, Jesus Christ, your cousin is a psycho. Oh my God, that was the weirdest trip of my emissary career. Easily. Anyway, for the moment, Mary is a newly eligible bachelorette still, newly dead husband. She's got the eye of the tiger, a fighter, dancing through the fire. She's a champion, and you're going to hear her roar. Except Elizabeth does not want to hear any fucking roaring from her cousin, from her hot cousin Mary. She's trying to put the kibosh on that before it even happens by giving her this list of men that she's allowed to pick from. So you don't like Dudley? Fine. There's plenty more on my list of dudes for you to pick from, my dear cousin. Mary immediately picks the worst one she could have picked, Lord Darnley. He's a real fuckboy, a pants man, if you will, for you Kath and Kim fans out there. He's a pants man. He's cheating on Mary constantly from the very beginning, and then when Mary gets herself a little something on the side, an Italian fellow named David Rizzio, Darnley finds out about it, and he shows up to where Mary is having dinner with Rizzio with his boys, like 4 of his boys, and they drag Rizzio into an anteroom and stab him to death. All the same, everyone assumes Mary has gives birth to a son 3 months later, and everybody pretty much assumes that that's David Rizzio's boy, that he's the paw to that there youngin'. Anyway, Mary is devastated. She's been her man got took in the most violent, horrific fashion. She's devastated. She has nowhere to turn, except she always has somewhere to turn because it's Mary Queen of Scots. She's very sexy. She'll just seduce her way out of this, you know, and she does. She meets this fella named the Earl of Bothwell. She works her magic on him, and bada bing, February 9th, 1567, Darnley dies in a big explosion. Turns out they had like strangled him and his valet to death, and then they blew up a house. It was called Kirkofield, where he was living. They blew it to smithereens. They found Darnley and his valet like in the garden, and they had been clearly strangled to death. So it was like pretty clear what happened here. They blew up the building trying to make it look like Darnley died of just a building exploding, just a common building explosion, but instead they find him strangled. Everyone assumes it was Mary and Bothwell immediately. Everyone's like, oh, I guess Mary and Bothwell did this. Mary did live right down the road at Holyrood Palace, and the two, Mary and Bothwell, do eventually marry. Even though they do an investigation into it and it's inconclusive, but everyone, again, thinks Mary's guilty, and this includes her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I. In June of that year, 1567, Scots nobles arrest Mary. They send Bothwell to Norway, where he dies insane 11 months later. No notes on how he went insane or what that means, but sounds bad. Mary is perp-walked through Edinburgh and imprisoned. Everyone's yelling at her. It's like that shame scene from Game of Thrones. And then she's forced by pain of death to abdicate in favor of her 13-month-old son, who then became James VI of Scotland. Baby King. That's fun, isn't it? Baby King. Oh, that could be a sitcom. I'd watch it. Baby King. Oh, ABC, give me a call. NBC, CBS, hey, is UPN still a channel? I'll go there. Oh, in May of 1568, Mary's irresistible ass charms one of her custodians at her jail in Edinburgh and escapes. Pretty quickly raises an army of a couple thousand soldiers, but then that army is crushed by the Scots nobles' army at Langside on May 13th, leaving Mary to flee to England. Her arriving in England throws the country into chaos. Everyone is like, oh my God, don't come over by us. It's like that, the Tim Robinson sketch with Chunky. And he's like, don't come over by me. This is the English reaction to Mary coming over. They want to deliver. Most everyone in English government wants to just deliver Mary directly to the Scottish, let them sort it out. But Elizabeth knows that means she's dead, like for sure. She's going to be killed. And Elizabeth hates Mary, but she also hates people who don't respect the divine right of kings and queens. She's also a big believer in that. So she just does not want her to die. She thinks it's fucked up. We can't go around killing queens, all right? That's crazy. We can't be doing that. That's Queen Elizabeth's whole thing. Elizabeth also knows at the same time she can't send her to the continent, to Europe, because all those horny Catholic princes and tight pants I mean, she'll make mincemeat of them. Mary will, with her charms, with her wiles. She'll easily. They'll be like, duh. Of course you could use my army to usurp Elizabeth I. That's what they'll be saying after Mary gets her claws in them. She can't have that either. So she decides the best thing to do, Elizabeth I, would be to keep her cousin Mary as her guest, prisoner, basically. She affords Mary a really lavish lifestyle still. She's still living as a queen, really. She has like 49, a staff of like 49 that she dines with every night. And yet Elizabeth does sneak in the occasional jab from time to time. Like one time she had a bunch of really shitty clothes sent to Mary. So they were so shitty that the people delivering them were like, there's some kind of mistake here. These clothes are exceedingly shitty. And then Elizabeth's like, no, that's the point. They're like a fuck you. And then the people are like, oh, okay. I didn't realize they were spite clothes. But the greatest insult of all is that Elizabeth refuses to meet with Mary at all because her name had not been cleared in the Darnley murder. She was like, I can't be seen talking to you though, because you're an accused murderer, Mary. And then for her part, Mary is scheming from the instant she gets into the custody of her cousin. She's constantly appealing to Catholic leaders around Europe, telling them, if you guys just bust me out of here, we can make England Catholic country again. How great does that sound? You got to admit, it sounds pretty great. But it's generally not successful. It's also, she's being watched constantly. Like Elizabeth has a master spy named Francis Walsingham, and he's watching her like constantly. It's while Mary's in England that the casket letters come to light. To this day, it's disputed whether they're legitimate or not, but they are supposedly letters sent between Mary and Bothwell that implicate them both in the murder of Darnley. And for what it's worth, Elizabeth definitely thought that they were legitimate. They had a hearing about the letters, but Mary refused to testify, and Elizabeth ordered them sealed. In 1569, Mary moved to Tutbury Castle in the Midlands and was placed in the custody of the Earl of Shrewsbury, who was told explicitly not to be charmed by Mary. They were like, "Don't you fucking get seduced by her! I swear to God, man, she'll do it." But apparently he was pretty good at it. He was not won over by Mary's vaunted feminine wiles. In 1570, Pope Pius V issued a papal bull excommunicating Elizabeth I, thinking Catholics across England would rise up in support of Mary and depose Elizabeth I and place Mary on the throne. Instead had the complete opposite of the intended effect. The Protestants were really riled up by Pius excommunicating their girl Elizabeth I. In 1571, Mary's caught up in another plot. It can't be overstated. She's scheming the whole time that she's in Elizabeth's prisoner. She doesn't stop scheming, but she's caught up in this plot with a Florentine baker and papal agent named Roberto Ridolfi that would have had the Catholic houses of Europe bankroll an army to kill Elizabeth and replace her with Mary. Mary could have been executed then, but instead Elizabeth decides a funner and messier punishment would be to just publish the casket letters. So she publishes the casket letters. It's her Regina George throwing the pages of the burn book around the school moment. She publishes the casket letters. She's still keeping her under lock and key. Once the French ambassador complained about Elizabeth's treatment of Mary, and Elizabeth snapped that Mary was, quote, the worst woman in the world whose head should have been cut off years ago and who would never be free as long as she lived. Not a fan. Again, after the Ridolfi plot, everybody wants Elizabeth to kill Mary. They're like, oh my God, what does she have to do to get her head cut off? It's the 1500s. I mean, we cut a guy's head off for sneezing too loud the other day, and this lady is constantly plotting your demise, and she's Teflon. This is crazy. People are losing their minds. But instead, she's like, no, that's good. I'll just keep her imprisoned and being watched by my spies. In 1583, Sir Francis Walsingham arrests a Catholic spy named Francis Throckmorton, who admits under torture that he was working on a plot on behalf of Mary. They execute Throckmorton at Tyburn, but Mary, again, skates by. Elizabeth really doesn't want to execute Mary. She just can't bring herself to do it. She did cut her allowance, her monthly allowance, when she figured out how much of it she was spending on bribes to couriers to get like conspiracy messages out. So she was like, all right, I'm cutting it by 50% and don't stop plotting. But at one point, Scotland says, shit, we'll do it for you. But here's the thing. You got to send some soldiers to just stand at the gallows or whatever, or the block. I forget how they were going to do it, but you got to send some soldiers just to be there, just to have some representation at the thing. And even that is, that's too much for Elizabeth. She's like, nah, not doing it. I can't. Elizabeth also considers sending Mary back to Scotland to rule jointly with her son, but James just rejects the idea out of hand. He's like, I don't think so. He's like, yeah, but you're a prisoner, so I don't know how I can rule with a prisoner, co-rule with a prisoner. This is what he says. Very disrespectful to his mother. In 1586, Walsingham tracks another Catholic priest, John Ballard, to a wealthy northern supporter of Mary named Anthony Babington. In July of that year, he had exchanged letters with Mary where they discussed a plot to assassinate Elizabeth. You know the story, place Mary on the throne. Babington said him and his boys would do that themselves. They would personally execute Elizabeth and then rescue Mary. Instead, they round all of them up and execute the fucking shit out of them. They were actually hanged, then castrated and disemboweled while still living. This was before the long drop technique, so they had lots of time between hanging to do other stuff. This was before the long drop technique, as we learned about in the Fun with Capital Punishment episode. After the Babington plot, of course, kill Mary fever is at a fever pitch now. People just they want her dead so bad, and she is convicted of treason. She's convicted of treason. Finally, on February 1st, 1587, Elizabeth signs Mary's death warrant. But even up to the last minute, Elizabeth is waffling. She's like, she wants Mary to like confess, and she says like she'll spare her life. But Mary never confesses. She always is like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm innocent, which is crazy given how much plotting they like her. She has a spy, remember. She knows about every move she's making, and she will admit to none of it. Elizabeth even considers having Mary murdered privately and then coming out and being like, oh, she died of natural causes. Oh, isn't that crazy? So we didn't even, it wasn't even us. It was just, it was something else. But she ultimately doesn't. She ultimately decides she's just got to go through with the old execution. Mary is executed by beheading at Fotheringay Castle a week later. Elizabeth reigns until her death in 1603 and is one of the most beloved queens in England's history. But wow, what a feud. It's good times. It lasted for like a quarter century, ended with one beheading the other. I mean, you can't ask much more from a feud than that. Next, we got none other but Roald Amundsen versus Robert F. Scott, Norway versus England, the race for the South Pole. These were the things people were interested in back then because there wasn't TV. There wasn't anything good to watch, so it was very exciting for these guys. They were about to go to the South Pole, the first guys to ever reach the South Pole. It's a race. In the North Pole had recently been reached for the first time, even though both claims were completely disputed. Both Robert Parry and Frederick Cook each claim to have reached the North Pole. But again, both were disputed. But the South Pole was the last great first to be had. Now the British explorer Robert F. Scott seems to be high-stepping his way to this first, to be the first to reach the South Pole. He's raising a bunch of funds for this mission. He's already a very famous explorer and author, and he raises a bunch of money, and as far as he knows, there's no serious challenger to his journey to the South Pole. He thinks he's alone, which is exactly what the Norwegian Roald Amundsen wants him to think. He had won fame finding the elusive Northwest Passage from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean, and now, in defiance of some very English gentleman's rules regarding exploration, he was working quietly on his own trip to the pole. He didn't even tell his crew what they were doing until they were already on their way. His reasons for that were a few. He wanted the element of surprise, but also he knew that his government, the Norwegian government, would not support him doing something that would piss Britain off this bad, which of course, Britain being the most powerful government in the world at the time, they didn't want those problems. So he's working in quiet. He doesn't tell anyone what he's doing until they're already on their way. They get to Madeira, I believe, the island of Madeira, and that's when Amundsen tells his crew what they're really doing. He's like, we're going south. We're going to go be the first to the South Pole. They're all down. They're like, hell yeah, let's go beat these English fuckers to the pole. Then, so trailing behind Scott, he heads for Antarctica himself in his ship, the Fram. Amundsen is much better prepared than Scott. He spends months quietly checking and double-checking lists of supplies and schedules, whereas Scott's playing it by ear. He's winging it. He just goes off vibes most of the time. He somehow got it in his head, Robert F. Scott, that ponies would be better for this polar expedition. Ponies would be better than dogs. He believed white ones would be impervious to the elements, white ponies, which I don't know where he got that from, but that's what he was going with. He's like, we need ponies, not dogs. Amundsen heard about this and was baffled. He had a quote. Scott had come to the conclusion that Manchurian ponies were superior to dogs on the barrier. Amongst those who were acquainted with the Eskimo dog, I do not suppose I was the only one who was startled on first hearing this. But, you know, that's great with Amundsen. He's like, that's fine. Use all the ponies you need. I'll be over here using dogs. But just to be safe, he did tell his dog dealer to remember that he was first. Don't go selling anybody dogs out from under me, all right, guy? Remember, I'm your best customer, all right? Roald Amundsen, #1 dog buyer in wherever we are in Norway. But Scott is fully committed to the doomed pony idea. He said, quote, no journey ever made with dogs can approach the height of that fine conception which is realized when a party of men go forth to face hardships, dangers, and difficulties with their own unaided efforts. I guess the ponies don't count as an aid. And aside from that, Amundsen was completely off Scott's radar. He had no idea what was up his sleeve, as evidenced by Scott would send instruments to Amundsen and be like, hey, kid, when you're at the North Pole, where Amundsen said he was going, hey, while you're at the North Pole, could you take some measurements for us? We'd really appreciate that. And Amundsen just doesn't say anything. He just embarrassedly accepts the instruments. This is like, damn, I feel bad, but I can't say shit. I gotta, because of the race for the pole. This is no time to be maudlin, to be overly thankful to Robert F. Scott for his instruments. Scott only learns of Amundsen's real plan on October 12th, 1910, when his ship, the Terra Nova, docks in Melbourne, Australia, and he gets a telegram from the island of Madeira, which, remember, is where Amundsen had revealed his plan to his boys. The letter, which he had given to his brother when they had left, instructing him to delay its transmission until October, when Amundsen calculated that Scott would be in the Indian Ocean and out of radio contact. The telegram telegram read, "Beg leave to inform you, Fram proceeding Antarctic, Amundsen." This is, the English are alarmed, to say the least. When the news reaches Britain, everybody's mad. Robert F. Scott's patron Clements Markham called Amundsen a blackguard, a blackguard. Is that how you say it? A blackguard? And said, in any case, Scott will be on the ground and settled long before Amundsen turns up, if he ever does. As it happens, Scott does beat Amundsen to Antarctica by 9 days. They start setting up depot stations along their path, stocking them with provisions and all. When Amundsen and the Norwegians arrive in their ship, the Fram, the English think they're going to be on the other side of the continent, then go through the Weddell Sea, but instead they're just like 400 miles down the coast. In fact, they run into each other at one point in the Bay of Whales, and the British, fully expecting to hate the Norwegians, are surprised to find that they're all agreeable fellas. One guy from the Terra Nova, Wilfred Bruce, said, "Individually, all seemed charming men, even the perfidious Amundsen." The Norwegians had heard about the motorized sledges that the English planned on using. That was another big part of their plan. It was ponies and motorized sledges. They were more baffled by the ponies, but the sledges they thought really might do some work. So they asked about them. And the guys from the Terra Nova say, shit, they're working great. In fact, one of them is already on Terra Nova, which Amundsen took to mean that they had already crossed the ice barrier and reached Beardmore Glacier. But actually what they meant was it was a little joke. The motor sledge had fallen into McMurdo Sound while they were unloading it. It was at the bottom of the sea. That was the Terra Nova. That was the Terra Firma that it was on. But the lie lights a fire under Amundsen's ass. He starts laying out his own depot stations, and he has a lot more depot stations than the English do, because again, he's a lot better prepared. He has like 10 times the food per man that Scott has. They do all this work, and then winter hits, and then from April to September, it's dark. So each man in his respective camp going crazy, not able to move. It seems like a terrible time. They're just in the dark in these for months at a time. They both start losing it. They're both being eaten up by suspicion that the other guy might get the drop on them. In fact, Scott is losing it most of all. He tells his guys when he hears about their run-in with Amundsen and the Norwegians at the Bay of Whales, he is like, he says, "By Jove, what a chance we have missed." He thinks like they could have arrested him and like sent him back on a ship, like loaded him on a ship and sent him away. And his guys are like, "What the fuck are you talking? You mean like kidnap him? I don't think we're allowed to kidnap people." But Scott had the idea that this particular part of Antarctica was English, and so they had the authority to throw him out of there. But mostly it's just a sign that Robert F. Scott is losing it. Amundsen, of course, is free to move as soon as the weather will allow him. That's a big thing, remember. He takes off a little bit early, actually. He does a false start, Amundsen, in September. There's a terrible storm going on, and he and his crew almost die before turning back to Framheim, their headquarters, named after their ship. Did we go over that? It's called Framheim. Anyway, on October 20th, 1911, Amundsen and his crew set out for real. Remember, they're already, because of where they were down the coast from McMurdo Sound, where the English were, they are a full degree closer to the pole than the English. So they have they have like a 60-mile head start. And again, they're much better equipped. Aside from their dogs, the Norwegians also have fur-lined, like Eskimo clothing, lightened sledges and skis. They have 4 navigators, where Scott is the only navigator for the Brits, and a ski expert. Most importantly, though, they just have shit tons of food and kerosene. This is the most important thing. Robert F. Scott, his rival, Ernest Shackleton, he hated Robert F. Scott Scott because he was on the British Antarctic expedition of 1901 to 1904 that Scott had based his smash hit book, The Voyage of the Discovery, on. And Scott made himself out to be the hero while diminishing the roles of Shackleton and others. But Shackleton had come within 100 miles of the South Pole in 1908 before having to turn back due to a lack of supplies. And this inspires everything Amundsen's doing. He had said that if had Shackleton been equipped right, the South Pole would have been a closed chapter. So he carries an abundance of food and fuel with him. By October 24th, they had reached their first depot, the Norwegians. And after starting 2 months and 6,000 miles behind the English, suddenly the Norwegians were 150 miles ahead. On November 7th, Amundsen leaves his last depot. December 8th, he passes Shackleton's furthest south record, and then on December 15th, he reaches the southernmost point on Earth, looks around, realizes there's no Union Jack. There's nothing at all. He puts the Norwegian tricolor on the spot, and then he has to haul ass back to Framheim because he's still super worried that until it's in the newspapers, nothing's official. So he's hauling ass back to his headquarters. He's got to get the news out. Also, Amundsen fully expects Scott to be there at any time. He thinks like it's only a matter of days and Scott will be here. As it turns out, he was very, very wrong. The British were very behind. They had the ponies were a huge disaster. Shock, I know. The ponies were a huge disaster. Their sharp hooves were always sinking into the snow, after which they'd have to be dug out, and then they'd have to there would be ice like caked on their sides, and they would have to get the ice off and warm the ponies, and then they would have to build snow walls to keep the wind off the ponies. They were a big pain in the ass is the point. Meanwhile, the dogs on the Norwegian side are just having the time of their lives in the tundra, burrowing in the snow to sleep and so forth. Just a much better option than ponies in every way. New Year's Day 1912, the two parties actually came within 100 miles of one another, but where the Norwegians were leaving and in great spirits, the English were zombified, walking dead type guys trudging toward the pole, dying a little more every step of the way. They're doing really bad. On January 3rd, Scott decides the final stretch of the journey will be taken on by 4 men instead of the 3 they had planned on the entire time. Another baffling decision from Robert F. Scott. So they make it to the South Pole. They do make it on January 17th. And when they do, they see a Norwegian flag and a small tent. Inside the tent, some supplies and a handwritten note from Roald Amundsen that said, "You lose, shithead." It didn't really say that. It said, "Dear Captain Scott, as you probably are the first to reach this area after us, I will ask you to kindly forward this letter to King Haakon VII. If you can use any of the articles left in the tent, please do not hesitate to do so. With kind regards, I wish you a safe return. Yours truly, Roald Amundsen." Fucking brutal. Oh my God. Face cracked, to borrow a phrase from the drag queens. That is, you lose, shithead would have been mild compared to that. You probably are the first to reach this area after us. Devastating. Honestly, credit to Scott for not just dying right there. Nobody would have blamed him, I don't think, if he would have just keeled over right there after that fucking devastating burn. Instead, possibly through sheer force of spite, Scott went on to do just about the only thing that would have undercut the totality of Amundsen's victory and the brilliance of his ha-ha fuck you letter. He fucking died in a nightmarish fashion while journaling about it. Which props to Scott. It's so hard to journal, even when you're not starving to death in Antarctica. You know, he's journaling about his horrible end, and by all accounts, Scott is a great writer, much better writer. This is one area where he has the edge on Amundsen. Amundsen seems the better explorer, but Scott was the better writer, and so he leaves this moving account. So the tragic tale of his death, goes on to overshadow Amundsen's victory and brushes under the rug of history all the ways in which Scott himself doomed himself and his men to horrendous deaths at the icy butthole of the planet. That's just the power of the written word, my friend. Adding to the tragedy of it all, when they found Scott and his men that November in a single snow-covered tent, they were just 11 miles from their biggest supply depot, the 1-ton depot they called it, which would have saved them. As for Amundsen, obviously he hadn't expected Scott to die out there. He would have much rather, he was just trying to beat his ass in the race to the pole, clown him a little bit, moving. He hadn't expected him to die, but he did. And so he carries this guilt with him the rest of his life, Amundsen does. In fact, in 1929, Amundsen died while flying to the rescue of a fellow explorer named Umberto Nobile. His dirigible had crashed. They later found Nobile, but Amundsen's plane vanished, turned back up a few months later, only by this time it was less a plane and more a floating field of wreckage. So from that, they were like, oh, he probably didn't make it. As Colin Evans points out in the great feuds in history, as I said, in this case, history was really, really not written by the victor. This is a case where the losing side, if Scott had just been a little more competent and his team had survived, they probably would have been forgotten. They would have been afterthought, and the losing side, the Washington Generals of polar exploration, if you will. But Scott managed to lose so hard that he kind of won. He packaged his loss as a noble struggle against forces beyond his control, and ended up basically getting partial credit for reaching the pole first. Historically speaking, I think that bears out. The station at the South Pole, after all, is now called the Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station. Partial credit, baby. How sweet it is. Our final historic beef of the episode, we got Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. Legendary shit. I was kind of hesitant to do this one for a minute because I feel like the FX series from 2017 already did a great job of telling this story. But no, I had a good time reading about it, so I said, fuck it, it goes in. 1933, all right. Bette Davis, the great actress Bette Davis, she gets her first role where her name appears above the title. It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal for her. It's a comedy called Ex-Lady, and Warner Brothers plans a huge publicity campaign to promote the movie. And Bette Davis's new chapter is like a big time movie star until Crawford announces she's divorcing her husband Douglas Fairbanks Jr. on the same day. All of a sudden, all the papers are full of Douglas Fairbanks and Joan Crawford's divorce, and Bette Davis's thing is relegated to the back, in like a small blurb. It's the beginning of a feud that would last for a quarter of a century. They hated each other. Davis once said, Crawford slept with every male star at MGM except Lassie. Just one of 1,000 that Bette Davis got off on Joan Crawford. Bette Davis was the more vocal hater in this relationship. Crawford was kind of more about the action. She strikes more in what she does, and Bette Davis, she'll roast your ass. Anyway, in 1935, Davis stars in Dangerous with the actor and 30s beefcake Francho Tone. She wins an Oscar for her performance, but she's crushed when Crawford gets her mitts on Tone, who Davis had fallen in love with herself. In 1987, a full 52 years after this happened, Davis said, "I have never forgiven her for that and never will." Making it all worse, this is all going on while they're still filming Dangerous, Tone and Davis. And so Tone would come back from lunch every day covered in Joan Crawford's lipstick. Drove Davis crazy, And just to pour salt on the wound, Crawford later said that Tone, quote, thought Bette was a good actress, but he never thought of her as a woman. Which, again, I said Bette Davis did the more of the shit talking, but, Joan was good at it, too, when she wanted to be. Davis never forgave her for that, as she said herself. Quote, she took him from me, Davis continued during that 1980s interview. She did it coldly, deliberately, and with complete ruthlessness. The bitch. Anyway, Oscars 1936, Davis does not think she's going to win for Dangerous, so she resents having to attend at all. Jack Warner made her go to protest the formation of the Screen Actors Guild, so in protest of that, she wore a really plain old navy dress. Again, not expecting to win, but she does. She does win. When she wins, her co-star, Joan's husband, Francho Tone, gets up, hugs Betty. Joan remains seated with her back turned. And then Francho scolds her for being rude. And so Joan says, she turns to Betty and says, "Dear Betty, what a lovely frock." Just spitting fire back and forth, like two Godzillas, these women. In 1943, Joan moves from MGM to Warner Brothers, where Betty has been for over a decade, and she demands the dressing room right next to Davis's and then sends gifts to her dressing room in an attempt to call a truce, and Betty sends every one of them back. In 1945, Crawford won the Oscar for Mildred Pierce, a role Davis had turned down. She famously accepts her Oscar in bed. And then this almost happened again in 1947 when Crawford starred in the crime drama Possessed and was nominated for another Oscar but didn't win this time. By 1950, Betty is convinced Joan is actually in love with her. Joan's close friend Jerry Asher said, quote, "Betty was always convinced, due to her ego, that Joan had the hots for her, and that's one reason why she was always so antagonistic and called her a phony." In 1952, Betty gets the opportunity of a lifetime to play a really mean-spirited, almost caricatured version of Joan Crawford. What happened was Joan Crawford had this ex-friend who wrote a movie that everyone understood to be about Joan Crawford. It was about like a washed-up actress who was desperately clinging on to her glory years. Really mean, but so of course, Bette Davis is like, I'm fucking in. I've never been more in for anything in my life. This sounds like a great time. I like to think, I've never seen it, but I like to think that Bette Davis used like the standard grade school dumb guy voice the whole time. Like she was like, "Duh, I'm Joan Crawford, duh." I don't know. It's probably not that way, but it's nice to dream. In 1962, banner year for the Bette Davis-Joan Crawford feud. Betty and Joan are co-starring in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, a movie Crawford convinced Davis to do with her, and Davis agreed on the conditions that A, she would play the title role, and B, director Robert Aldrich would assure her he wasn't sleeping with Crawford. So Davis gets her assurance, agrees to the film, but the two still hate each other. Joan was on the board of Pepsi. Her late husband, he had been an executive with Pepsi. So Davis had a Coke machine put in her dressing room. One scene called for Davis's character Jane to beat Crawford's character, and Crawford called in a stunt double because she was worried Davis would hit her for real. Then later, when they were shooting the same scene but in a close-up, so they couldn't use a double, Davis did hit her for real. Some said Crawford required stitches, but Davis said she, quote, barely touched her. At this point, this is literally pro wrestling, and Davis had given Crawford a stiff one, so Crawford owed Davis a receipt, to put it in wrestling terms, and she gave one to her. They were filming a scene where Jane drags Crawford's character out of bed and across the room. Crawford knows Davis has a bad back, so she makes herself as heavy as possible, depending on which version of the story you believe, either by simply making herself dead weight, putting rocks in her pockets, or wearing like a weighted belt, like a weighted exercise belt, maybe a combination of all of them. But then she wore all this. She makes herself as heavy as possible, and then she keeps spoiling she keeps ruining takes, so then she has to keep doing it over and over. By the end, Betty is in agony. Her back is killing. As a back pain sufferer, this is fucking diabolical by Joan Crawford. It's also while filming Whatever Happened to Baby Jane that Joan famously sent director Robert Aldrich a letter accusing Betty of having terrible body odor. The letter reads, "Bob dear, I hope by now you have had an opportunity to talk with Betty about her body odor. It is quite the distraction for me working within close proximity to her if she refuses to bathe or wear adequate deodorant. I have found myself gagging on several occasions during this filming. Fondly, Joan Crawford. The fondly is so good. But ultimately, of course, they get it done. They finish the picture. It's a massive hit. A lot of people think it's going to be a bomb, but it's not. It's a massive hit. It's very good. Davis is nominated for Best Actress in 1963 and Victor Buono for Supporting Actor, while Crawford went unrecognized, unnominated. She says, that's cool. How about I just come to the Oscars anyway? And I hear there's a lot of actresses nominated for Best Actress this year that aren't going to be able to make it. So let's say I, Joan Crawford, go and sit in and accept. If one of them wins the award, I'll just accept it on their behalf. It's great for everybody. They agree to that. And so she shows up. Sure enough, Anne Bancroft, she wins and she's not there. So Joan Crawford collects her trophy. I don't know what her speech was like, but apparently she was just she kind of just acted like she won an Oscar. She was going around posing with the other winners and shit, which respects the hustle there. That's hilarious. People are getting mad being like, she knows she didn't win, right? And she's just having the time of her life. I love it. Of course, the studio tries to recapture the magic of whatever happened to Baby Jane. They start work on another movie based on an unpublished short story by Henry Farrell, the guy who wrote the novel Baby Jane was based on, called Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte. Again, casting Crawford and Davis opposite one another and again tapping Robert Aldrich to direct. But this time, Crawford dropped out after a week and a half of filming, claiming she was unwell, and then eventually replaced by Olivia de Havilland after several actresses turned down the part. Crawford died in 1977, and Davis famously reportedly said about her, "You should never say bad things about the dead. You should only say good. Joan Crawford is dead. Good." Which again, hot fire. But the thing, nobody can actually find like a source for this quote, so nobody really knows if she said that or not. But that's it for great beefs in history, beef a la history. I was watching a true crime show called Body Cam. It's all body cam footage, and then they talk about what happens on the body cam footage. There was a crazy story. It was like in Ohio, and this family was hanging out on their porch on the 4th of July. They're just sitting around in a circle on their porch, and this other family runs up on them with Roman candles, blasting them with Roman candles. So the men in the family get up and they're like, approach these guys, and the other family just starts wailing on them. It's fucking crazy. They just start beating these people mercilessly. So it's like a light-hearted, like ha 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 shooting fireworks thing, and then it turns just into the ultra violence. It's like the worst thing I've ever. I was like, oh my god, this is horrible. And then the police are interviewing the mother, and it completely took me out of it. She goes, they came over with Roman candles, and then they beat the hootie out of my son. Yeah, hootie. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine, folks. I do not know where that came from. Is that an expression in Ohio? Write us in. I mean, I don't know. Is that a saying? That's crazy. Beat the hootie out. Like, if I am ever beaten mercilessly, please don't euphemize that much. Is that a word? Euphemize? Don't say hootie. Don't say hootie unless they beat me so hard I started going, I don't want to be with you. Then you can say, all right, then you can say they beat the hootie out of me. Until then, you say shit. You say dog shit. You say bejesus, something that captures the seriousness, the severity of the situation, of the beatdown I was given by these family of hooligans. What else is going on? I was thinking the other day, the internet, if you're online, you see from time to time those monks, who kick each other in the balls really hard, repeatedly. You know what I'm talking about? I can see them now in my mind's eye. They stand there like this and they kick each other in the balls. I was thinking about those guys. It's funny, they have like a reason for doing that. They have to, like, there has to be some reason greater than doing it for a laugh? You would think there was, but I don't know it. I don't know, and I don't know anyone else who does. And yet everyone knows those guys. You know, they're like demonstrating something or other, but I have no idea what it is. I wonder if they realize that, you know, if they're like, are people getting it? Are people getting our message? And their publicist or whoever, they probably don't have a publicist as monks, but their publicist or whoever is like, no. They're not getting it. That's the bad news. The good news, you guys are now considered kings of physical comedy. They're talking about y'all as some of the greats. Also this week I was getting back into noir movies. I love watching old noir movies, especially late at night. Fall asleep to them. It's a good time. I think I love pretty much every noir movie I watch. I find that there's something good about every one, even if they're really shitty, you know, they're kind of like that, because if they're shitty, they're kind of funny. And I was thinking the only kind of noir movie I don't like is the noir movie where sometimes I'll see a noir movie where the femme fatale looks a little bit too much like an old photo I saw of my grandma once when she was young. You know, she's being all sexy. She's being a sexy gun mall type lady. She's saying stuff like, why don't you come by and rail me real good sometime? Stuff like that. Smoking, entertaining men late at night. And you're like, stay away from my grandma, Edward G. Robinson. But anyway, that'll about do it for us this week on Oddball History. Thank you again for joining us. Until next time, we love each and every one of you.
Digging through the past, crazy tales they uncover fast. History's stranger than you think. They'll also talk about wieners in a blink. They'll talk about wieners in a blink. Oddball History.